Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today's table topic is going to be about maintaining minority voters. We saw an increase of support coming into the Republican Party as a result of this last election cycle with President Trump. We need to maintain it. How do we maintain it? We certainly don't want to see a 20% increase of Black male votes in the state of Georgia that will go away or somehow turn into apathy votes or non-votes or individuals who go right back to voting Democrat because we failed to maintain new voters. You know, a few weekends ago, my husband Kelvin and I spoke at the Fayette County GOP, and we had the absolute best time. Shout out to the Fayette County GOP. They are doing it right. But what I did notice is that there were a lot of new faces, and many of which were Black and Black voters. I was especially excited about this because it was a reflection of where we are and where we are going. All the new guests range from older to middle age to younger voters, which it was like the new guests range from older to middle age to a young family with a toddler. And when speaking with each of them, they expressed that they were new voters who had came over from this past 2024 election cycle. And I was extremely excited because I felt like we were no longer looking at a bunch of data points and stats, but I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I'm now seeing the shift that's actually taking place. Black voters are making a shift, and it started a long time ago, but we're finally seeing the results of it having passed this November 2024. So why am I talking about this? Because Black conservatives, we have been on a mission regarding our community, and the mission was to shift, and we've done this a few times, but not on this scale. And at one point, I believe that our fight was more so about trying to be heard. We just wanted to be heard. We wanted to be known that there were Black Republicans and there are Black people who did not flip and switch and start to walk down that Democrat platform. However, we are here, and we're here because we have something to say. And then it went to us having to make it known to gatekeepers that we are here and that we are going to fight. We're going to push back against your terrible policies and the terrible narratives. And then it changed to a fight to educate, dismantling the myths that have been handed out and being able to show people that these myths have been detrimental to our community while also handing out some hard truths. So this led me to where we are today. And now we're at the fight to maintain. You see, what happened in November was a phenomenon that has a lot to do with the state of the country, as well as the respect that some people have towards the person, President Trump. While ideology allowed our party to align with the consensus of most, it doesn't mean that the party is now what everyone is standing for. It doesn't automatically mean that people know what we stand for. What tends to happen is that there's a subculture of differences that tend to lead to some changes, and then it somehow creates these challenges. In other words, whenever you leave one environment and enter into another, there's an adjustment that has to take place. And this adjustment can be leaning into the environment or trying to recreate what you liked about the environment you last came from. So I thought it would be extremely helpful to highlight the fundamental differences between Black conservatives or Black Republicans in the Black Republican world and the Black progressive and Black Democrat world, so that we're explaining why it matters and that it should matter to all of us, that we understand what these fundamental differences are. Because what I don't want to see is I don't want to see those who were Black Democrats for a majority of the time move over into the Republican space and then long for some of those things that the culture provided to you. And these are things that made you feel good. It made you feel included. It made you feel like other people were helping you. And then to step over on our side and realize that we don't provide that type of support. We're about standing on your own 2 feet and making your own decisions. And we want to empower you to be the leader of your home and your own decisions. That may feel extremely uncomfortable. And it may feel like you're being neglected when you're not, when we're focusing on the totality of the issue rather than these subcultures. So it's important to know what these fundamental differences are. The truth is, two things can be right at the same time. The Black community can be the most crime-ridden of all communities while also being the most uneducated, while also not understanding that an uneducated community leads to increased crime. Having these conversations, we have to have them, particularly now. Having a society of people, no matter their race, that is used as a pawn in political games leads to negative returns for all of us. It's only a matter of time before an isolated situation spills over into other areas. A key element is maintaining those who now see the game as having been played and the fatal consequences that are associated with them. These consequences that are linked to once good ideas that have become corrupted, starting with our current event, the Department of Education. So, according to recent articles, President Trump is expected to issue an executive order to abolish the Department of Education. And this is being reported by the Wall Street Journal. Education Secretary Linda McMahon is directed to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Education Department, according to a draft of a potential executive order. The order states that the experiment of controlling American education through federal programs and dollars has failed our children, our teachers, and our families. Congressional Democrats claim Trump's plans are aimed at destroying public schools for the benefit of wealthy individuals. However, the United States ranks 20th out of 41 nations in education, based on this analysis by the Organization for Economic and Cooperation and Development. And guess where Black children rank? Studies have shown that white students tend to score higher on standardized tests compared to Black peers. Historically, graduation rates have been lower for Black students compared to white students. A lower percentage of Black children transitioning to college has shown up in compared to white counterparts. The factors that are often listed as contributing to this cause include funding inequalities, access to experienced teachers, and the impact of socioeconomic status, as well as systematic racism. Well, let's look at this list. Funding inequalities. Well, typically, the process of funding is based on the areas that pays into the pot. Most failing schools are in poor neighborhoods, so naturally the funding will be a little different. But there's a way around that, and it's called lobbying. Many of the parents and PTAs in other areas advocate for funding for their students. And then there's the presence that's felt when you have parental involvement. Well, parental participation is at an all-time low in predominantly Black and poor areas. And I actually blame this on us not paying attention to who we are electing. Because I remember there was a woman who was running for office who had a great idea. She stated that maybe we should do PTA meetings on Saturdays every once in a while for parents who happen to work in the evenings. Well, she got voted out and someone who had never taught in a classroom got voted in. Let's look at their other excuse, access to experienced teachers. Well, wasn't Teach for America a program that was supposed to address that? And then there's their favorite, the systematic racism. Well, let's see. I think we can all agree that a system in and of itself cannot be racist, because racism is a heart condition that requires emotions for it to be activated. So that means that what you're really saying is that the people within the system are racist. And considering the fact that the school boards, particularly in Black areas, are made up by typically Black people who represent the very community that they represent, I think it's extremely hard to point the finger at racism. So where do we go from here? We stop looking for a single culprit and we start looking at all contributing factors. Yes, racism was a contributing factor, but not so much today. Yes, teachers' unions are protecting teachers to a default and not adequately firing teachers. Yes, funding has been misused and mostly spent on salary increases rather than students. And yes, the Black American subculture has pushed superficial rhetoric that plays a major, major role in the downfall of our community. And absolutely yes, the Department of Education has pushed policy that has been detrimental to students, and it's time to make some difficult decisions. But I don't want you to just take my word for it. I want you to hear from a Black teacher who I do not believe is a Republican, And hear what he has to say about the Department of Education.
I've never had anybody ever in my history of being Black ever say, thank God for the Board of Education. They may say, thank God for my teacher, Dr. Musa Abdullah. They may say, thank God for the resource that was provided, or I got a great guidance counselor. Is Trump playing politics, or is this something that we should be upset about?
The Department of Education, I liken it unto the MTA, the Metro Transit Authority of New York City. It is a money pit. And I'm going to tell you, let me give all the viewers something they may not know, especially if you were born in the 70s. If you were born, early 70s to mid 70s.
Okay.
There was a part of your academic career when the Department of Education didn't even exist. The Department of Education wasn't even established until 1980.
That's Reagan.
Exactly. So if you're talking about how important it was, why did it take till the 80s to establish? Right? So this is what they recognized. There is so much money in education. We need to get in on this hustle. And it is a hustle. Up until that point, the states controlled the finances. And because they controlled the finances, they had more say in what was happening. And I'm going to tell you, if it were not for the Department of Education and some of the many, many, many politicians that subscribe to the idea of the Department of Education, this standardized testing wouldn't even be a thing like it is.
Wow.
And this is something people don't ever talk about because they're not in education. You got people that are not in education making educational policies, telling educators what we should do. Well, let me say this to you. Standardized testing is the dumbest thing on the planet if you are telling us we need to have differentiated instruction. So you want to tell me I need to tailor my instruction, but the test is standard? That's a contradiction in itself. But where does that come from? That comes from the state governments who take their cues from the federal government. No Child Left Behind was one of the worst educational policies ever introduced. That was implemented by the Department of Education, where it gave standardized testing, and essentially it gave reward to those who were proficient on a massive scale, district-wide. If they were proficient, those districts received more money. But see, this is what people don't know. And I know because I was an educator during No Child Left Behind, and I dealt with the opposite end of it. Now, this is what's crazy. Just like the economic system in America where the middle class gets crushed, that's how it is in education. You got a lot of money if your school districts did well, but you also got a lot of money if your school districts did poorly.
What?
Yeah, they threw money at the problem. But the people in the middle, if you did okay, they're like, oh, you're okay. You don't need anything, you're good. The people did well, oh, you did well, we're going to reward you. Not even taking into consideration that schools changed their entire curriculum strategy to teach to the test.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the ones who didn't have the financial abilities to teach to the test and have test prep and all of those are the poor schools. Those are schools I've worked in all of my career. They got a lot of money too, but the money was top heavy. So you would say, so on average, a child in the district in which I worked, the average per child disbursement was about $24,000 per child. Well, if your district was terrible, now it bumped up to 30. They gave you an extra $6,000 per child.
Wow.
Right? But guess where that money went, Brother Black?
Uh-oh.
Administrators and administrative functions. Kids never saw it. Kids never saw it. Even during No Child Left Behind, even when the per capita, where the amount of money they gave per student was increased, me and my fellow staff members still had to buy supplies for kids. Major pro is that educators will be in charge of the devising the curriculums, the implementation of educational policy, right? That's one. Another thing, the money has less hands to pass through. And now actual educators will be able to say, stop giving superintendents $300,000 a year jobs, $250,000 a year jobs. Stop paying their literally, and I'm going to say this from what I know, literally, brother, the assistants to the assist. Let me make sure I get it right. I don't want to screw it up because I want you to get this message. The assistants to the assistant superintendents are making $180,000 a year. The assistants to an assistant is getting $180,000. But I'm still buying pencils for my students.
That's what
I'm buying notebooks from the Dollar General for my students.
Right.
So that's a major pro because now that money's got to actually go to the kids. I have never said, thank goodness for the Department of Education.
There it is.
I've never even met a person who worked at the Department of Education, and I lived in Maryland.
So there you have it. We have people who are fighting to keep the Department of Education open in Congress. We have congressional people who are so old that they weren't even, their education was not impacted by the Department of Education, considering the fact that the Department of Education was funded and created in 1980. These are people who advocate for more money for students while overpaying the staff. If you want to see that full video, go to the description box and you can click on that link and watch the full interview or that full clip. But here's another point. I also have not heard from teachers who are advocating for keeping the Department of Education open. And I totally agree that no child left behind left a lot of kids behind. And I know that it is a Bush policy, but it wasn't good. And it may have been a good idea at the time, but it wasn't a good idea to reward low-performing schools by giving them more money, thinking that that somehow is going to fix the problem. A part of holding government accountable is to recognize when the government is making mistakes and be willing to correct it. Speaking of corrections, after the break, I'm going to correct some of the myths imposed on Black Republicans and where some of these fundamental differences come from, which I believe are actually shared but not prioritized the same. So stay tuned as we dive into these fundamental differences between the Black Republican, the Black Democrat, and why it matters to all of us as we continue the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs31:8@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. Welcome back to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. In today's table topic, we are talking about maintaining the minority voter, because we have seen an influx of new voters coming into the Republican Party, and we gotta maintain it now. And before the break, we discussed the discussion around dismantling the Department of Education and why this matters for Black and poor communities. And I thought it was important to share that clip of what Black teachers are saying and what their perspective is, because oftentimes our Blackness is put on display, but not our voice. Let me repeat that. Oftentimes, Blackness is put on display, but not our voice. There are a lot of Black people who are rejecting poor policy that's coming from the Democrat Party, but no one's listening to them. Matter of fact, they are being silenced because it's not profitable to push the voice and the message, because it might accidentally align with other people and not this subset of people that we're trying to create and make their voice elevated higher than others. So here we are, which in many cases, the messaging that comes from what we're saying contradicts this ethnic push that places race above ability or capabilities or even opportunities. So let's discuss some of the fundamental differences between Black Democrats and Black Republicans, and quite frankly, why I personally can never be a Democrat. The first reason, in the Black Republican world, our ethnicity matters least. And I see placing color and the color of my skin on a pedestal as futile and meaningless. It has absolutely nothing to do with my capabilities or abilities. And when you tell me it does, you are simultaneously telling me that I am at some type of a disadvantage or starting off at a disadvantage simply because I was born Black, ignoring other important factors. Matter of fact, I want you to listen to one of the greatest economists ever to ever do it, Thomas Sowell, and what his thoughts are on this.
You cite in Intellectuals and Race, you cite an observation by the intelligence expert, IQ scientist James Flynn, that just stopped me cold. After the Second World War, you've got large numbers of American troops remaining in Germany. For that matter, there's still several tens of thousands there today. And both Black and white American soldiers had children with German women. And Flynn discovered that those children growing up in Germany showed no IQ differences at all. The Black kids and the white kids, the same. Quoting Intellectuals and Race, Professor Flynn concluded that the reason was that the offspring of Black soldiers in Germany, and now you're quoting Professor Flynn, grew up in a nation with no Black subculture, close quote. Which means what? Which means they experienced exactly the same expectations. Is this
No, the expectations are external. The culture in which they grew up was not the culture in which Black kids grew up in America today.
So they had...
There's no gangster rap that was pervasively available in Germany.
So here's what I'm getting. There is something about Black subculture in America today that holds African Americans themselves back?
Yes. In fact, I went into this in a previous book on which about Black rednecks and white liberals, because that same held whites in the South back as well. That in the time this mental testing in the First World War turned up, among other things, the fact that whites from various 4 or 5 southern states scored lower on the mental test than Blacks from 4 or 5 northern states. And so it really was a question of the subculture that was there, which was a handicap to both.
See, what I believe as a Black Republican is that my environment and other external factors do play a role, but the color of my skin is factored in the least. This explains why we have so many Black people who are successful and so many poor whites who are not. If my color held as much significance as it is emphasized on the left, then data will reflect that as well. But what is reflected is that your decisions and how you are raised impacts the trajectory of your life much more. And if you are raised in a home that places an emphasis on skin color, then you will believe there is some external disadvantage to being Black. But the truth is, cultural priorities are the real problem. The same economist Thomas Sowell once said that there are three reasons for disparities: repeated patterns of problematic behavior, family instability, and cultural priorities. All three are at the bottom of the list. When examining the Black American subculture, particularly as a Black Republican, I hate the Black American subculture. It encourages all of the things that are either detrimental or fruitless, and it tells everyone to focus on the macro issues such as policing and DEI and etc. And it totally ignores, and in some cases justifies, bad behaviors that are associated with these micro issues, much like those mentioned above: the repeated patterns of problematic behavior, family instability, and cultural priorities. These are all things that can be addressed on a micro level in the home. But no, we're told that those things should not be the focal, which leads me to the next fundamental difference between Black progressives and Black Republicans, is that we believe that micro issues are the real macro issues. I believe being a stand-up citizen, raising your children that way, taking care of your home, removing those broken blinds in the windows, cutting your grass, picking up trash versus walking by it. I believe that all of these things that were a staple in our community that has since left, I believe if we tackle these issues first, then the macro issues will take care of themselves. But instead, Democrats rather corral a bunch of Black people to march and to take down with the goal of taking, but instead, Dems will corral a bunch of Black people together to march against corporations and capitalism. But if you were to ask them how many of those people marching have a personal budget or have gotten themselves out of debt, I can guarantee you the number will be low. That's not a personal dig on my community. I'm just highlighting the damage that is done when you skip these important details. We truly believe, particularly as Republicans, that a rising tide will lift all ships. So it's helpful to the world when a community of people are uplifted, especially in a capitalistic society. Listen, capitalism is a friend to the poor because it provides a way out. It creates moments in time when things are up and down. It allows you to catch the wave so you can ride it for a long time. I heard a story in a TV show that I was watching. Don't know how true it is, but I'm sure this has happened before. But it was a cool idea. And the woman was saying that her father was an immigrant who came and worked hard and obtained his citizenship. You know, he did it all the right way and all that good stuff. But what was interesting is the example that was used was that the family member would drive around and find furniture that was put outside on the street, and then he would refurbish it, having, in some cases, he ended up selling that same piece of furniture or refurbished furniture back to some of the people that he got it from. And I thought to myself, that's capitalism. Literally taking someone else's trash and turning it into a product that could be sold for now his reward. Only capitalism allows those type of opportunities to exist. That's not to say that there aren't any bad actors, but I have the freedom to succeed or I have the freedom to fail. So you can take advantage of it whether you're going to succeed or you can take advantage of whether you're going to fail. But guess what? If you understand how the system works, you will also understand but guess what? We all have the opportunity. And we also all have the opportunity to understand how the system works. And it's up to you to understand it so that you're not taken advantage of, ultimately avoiding being harmed by the system because you understand the system. But the problem is that the left teaches to fight the system rather than to understand it. So whenever something doesn't look right or doesn't feel right, you then jump to this extreme because you have no clue of other potential factors. So next, when speaking to Black Democrats, I feel like I'm speaking to people that are living in different time periods. It feels like Black Democrats are stuck in the 60s in the civil rights era, and it feels like Republicans, we're like stuck in Reconstruction. It always sounds like Democrats are focusing on breaking something down or what feels unjust or some case that they can just fight against, whereas Republicans believe in taking what we can from the system and let the unjust work itself out, because it will. Even slavery. Think about it. Slavery was a means of mass production. Slaves were of no use to the slave owner if they weren't making money from their product. Having a lot of slaves means you can produce more, which means you can make more money. If you think about it from a business perspective, the introduction of the cotton gin and any other machine that would have eventually put human labor at the bottom of the production cycle, making machines producing much faster, it would have made human labor antiquated and outdated, producing at a much slower pace. And as a result, the market would have forced things to change. And as we stated before, two things can absolutely be true at the same time. The war certainly ended slavery faster, and we're grateful for that. But it's also true that it would have probably have ended once the market would have evolved. And during Reconstruction, we saw success explode amongst the Black community. We had teachers, bankers, pilots, entrepreneurs, pharmacists. The community was thriving, not with the absence of discrimination, but in spite of discrimination. Fast forward to the 1960s, and they felt that thriving could not happen without the removal of every injustice, and that we must all fight the fight against the man in order to have a shot at success. But fighting for our civil rights, and or most accurately, their fight for equal treatment, was absolutely a good fight that became corrupted when the fight became more important than the fight to maintain family stability or home education of our children, or more important than maintaining the integrity of our community. Equality became what now looks like as handouts, not obtaining access like what the original fight was supposed to be about. Now we've created dependency, which is what we fought against during Reconstruction. Fundamentally, Black Republicans believe we simply need the same access and that we can make it work for ourselves. Whereas Democrats, it appears that Democrats want to ensure that we have the same access while also regulating the competition, feeling as though they've got to have a leg up of some sort. And the only way that Black people can get the leg up on society or somehow get back into the space where they think we should be in order to compete normally, we have to tie our competition's one arm behind their back and tell them to go fight. Is this true equality? If we are limiting others, hoping it will increase our chances, is that equality? Well, that leads me to another fundamental difference. Black Republicans honor our history by taking advantage of what their fight produced, while Black Democrats seem to honor our history by remembering the struggle and placing the fight on the pedestal above the achievement. We believe the achievement is what we do with the results. It's not critiquing the results, it's not being enough or having not achieved enough opportunity to go further, or maybe their policies could have done more. It's easy to say that from our perspective. In fact, not being able to see that you are living in the dream of our ancestors and what they fought for is a gross display of ungratefulness. History should serve many purposes, of which one is being enlightened, of which one history should serve many purposes, of which one of them being enlightening all of us on what it took to stand in the blessings of today. But we've got to stand in those blessings. If we're constantly fighting, we are also neglecting the wins that have lied down in front of us. And lastly, another fundamental difference, even though there are more, but for the sake of time, I'm going to end on this one. I have come to discover between Black Dems and Black Republicans, Black Democrats seem to talk the talk where I feel like Black Republicans walk the walk. Black Dems tend to hunker down on the Black side of town and complain from the bunker, never stepping foot on the field. Because the real work isn't against the white man. It's in our very homes. It's rejecting the subculture that tells us entertainment and athleticism is more important than education. It's owning the fact that living closely together isn't a valid justification for crime. It's taking pride in our own neighborhoods and not settling for garbage on the streets. It's participating in school board meetings and not electing people simply because they look like me instead of electing people who are for me. It's encouraging our young girls to have self-respect and our young boys to have courage more so than self-pride. The list can go on. And unfortunately, Black Democrats have placed the focus outward, while Republicans believe the focus should be turned inward. And these are just a few of the fundamental differences that I've noticed personally as it relates to the Black Republican and the Black Democrat. After the break, you will hear from the economists again. You're listening to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King. This is Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back.
Hello, everyone. My name is Suzanne Guy, and this is the Church's Moment. There is an incredible opportunity to start a distinct pro-life ministry at your church. We started one at our church about 5 years ago, and the fruit has been tangibly beautiful. We do monthly meetings that educate and equip the body of believers on sanctity of human life issues from womb to tomb by bringing in and featuring different pro-life leaders from all over Georgia, as well as featuring different ministries like post-abortion healing ministries or foster care ministries. There are so many great community partners out there. And then the second part of this pro-life ministry is having a care team. This is an opportunity to show moms in crisis, moms in unplanned, unwanted, or crisis pregnancies, that the church is the place to run to, that the church is a safe haven and a place to go for tangible help, real hope, true compassion, friendship, and discipleship, and yes, an opportunity to share the gospel in both word and deed. Brothers and sisters in Christ, will you consider starting a distinct pro-life ministry at your church? It's so easy. Please contact me today to find out how simple this is. You can contact me at my email, proverbs318@att.net. This is the Church's Moment.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion. This is the Janelle King Show right here on Extra 106.3, where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And if you're joining us for the first time, don't worry. You can catch an encore episode tomorrow at 9 a.m. right here on Extra 106.3. And remember, our podcast drops every Tuesday wherever you get your podcast. And if you're feeling eager, you can watch the video podcast right now on YouTube. Just remember to subscribe to our YouTube and Rumble pages, and your likes, comments, and shares are always welcomed. Now grab a seat and let's get back to the table. That's right. This is the Janelle King Show, and this is Extra 106.3. And this is where we discuss those kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today, our table topic is maintaining the minority vote. We saw that in the state of Georgia, President Trump received about 20% of the Black male vote, which is huge. But how do we maintain this? We're seeing a lot of Hispanics who are now coming over to the Republican Party because they're anti what's happening at the border as well. But what happens when the border is closed up? How do we maintain? Well, we've got to start telling the truth, starting now. You see, the biggest misconception is that Black Republicans care more about money and self-advancement. That couldn't be any further from the truth. Matter of fact, if that was the case, then why would we advocate for more Black people to come into the party? And why not just nestle into our little Republican rooms and make all our money and forget about everybody else? Because the truth is, selfishness is lying to you. Because the truth is, selfishness is lying to you. It's lying to you so that I can get your vote, so that I can keep a nicely secure Democrat voter. Never growing, never actually delivering on the promises, only maintaining pawns in a sick game.
Dr. King's message was equal opportunity for individuals, regardless of race, In the years that followed, the goal changed to equal outcomes for groups. What now rose to dominance was the social justice agenda. If the social justice, those backing the social justice agenda, could have everything they wanted, what would the country look like?
We'd be killing each other. They want everybody to have equal outcomes, or as close as they can get to it. Unfortunately, you don't have the preconditions for that. Even in the same family, one of the examples I use in the book is among 5-child families,
Right.
the national merit finalist is the firstborn just over half the time. That is more often than the other 4 siblings combined. Right. The fifthborn is 6% of the time. And so it was even where you have almost ideal conditions. They're born to the same parents, raised under the same roof, and they're not the same.
Because all kinds of things matter, including birth order.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, you take on various fallacies here. Let's take on a couple of them. The equal chances fallacy. Even in a society, I'm quoting you, social justice fallacies, even in a society with equal opportunity, people from different backgrounds do not necessarily even want to do the same things. In American sports, blacks are very overrepresented in professional basketball, whites in professional tennis, and Hispanics in Major League Baseball. Why is that telling?
Because the implicit assumption, and sometimes explicit assumption, is that in a world where everything was fair, where everyone was treated fairly, you would have things would be representative of the population demographics as a whole in all these various activities.
Right.
Imagine a black kid born in Harlem, and he's born with a body identical to that of Rudolph Nureyev, the great ballet dancer. There's the odds are 1,000 to 1 that he'll become a ballet dancer, much less another Rudolph Nureyev. I mean, he would be looked at strangely by all his friends in the neighborhood if he even wanted to do that.
What you mean?
But chances are he wouldn't even think about it.
Right. So you mean to say that when you tried out for the Brooklyn Dodgers, you tried out for the pitching position in the Brooklyn Dodgers, and they didn't hire you, you were not being discriminated against?
Actually, I was trying out for first base, and the real reason I messed up was that my position was center field. But in order to be a good center fielder, I need hours and hours of practice, and it was a very bad spring. I got very little practice, and so I figured at least I won't go out and make an idiot of myself in center field. So I made an idiot of myself at first base.
All right. Chess pieces fallacy. The chess pieces fallacy.
Yes.
Explain that one.
Well, Adam Smith had a very low opinion of abstract theorists who imagine that they can control a whole society with the ease with which one puts chess pieces where you want them on a chessboard. And so there's this notion of this inert mass of people down there, and then the wonderfully brilliant people at the top who ought to be telling them what to do. And there's no thought that, first of all, those at the top don't even know the people's individual conditions, who are very different from themselves. And when they try to help, they can make things disastrous.
As Black Republicans, we understand that a lack of education regarding how the system works is just as bad as withholding the benefits of the system. Both work against the system itself. And when it's at its best, opportunities are there for everyone, and they're endless. So yes, there are times when as Black Republicans, we have to push against poor policy and poor influences. But there are also times when we must educate ourselves on how to win utilizing the capitalistic system that exists. So what do you think? What are some fundamental differences that I've left off, or some of the things that you've discovered from your vantage point? Drop a comment Remember to rate the show if you're listening on the podcast. If you're on YouTube, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things. Until next week, stay unafraid, stay unapologetic, and never stop seeking the truth. Have a great week.